In this final episode of my upgrade series, I'm going to be building a controller cabinet and I'm going to install it under the tank. I'm going to take all of the lighting electronics from my Stratons and I'm going to hide them away up by the ceiling. I'm going to put some corals in their final resting spot and did a little coral shuffling. And then I'm going to provide an update on how the tank is doing. If you're new to this channel and haven't seen the first 3 episodes, I would recommend going back and at least checking out the first one before you watch this episode. And if you're a return visitor, welcome back and stay tuned. So as you can see under the tank, it's kind of a mess. All these cords and cables, and then I have my Trident here and then the battery backup. As you can kind of see, I kind of mounted some of the power bricks and controllers up on top. I'll finally mount my dosing system under the tank, and then I might keep the CO2 scrubber back there for easy access. So my wife and kid are out of town for the weekend, so I'm taking advantage of the free time by regrouting the tile where the old tank used to be. I'm also patching the holes in the wall from the old tank. And then while I have all of this space cleared out in my kitchen, I'm going to use this space to build my electrical cabinet. So my dad was in town recently and I had him cut some plywood out of his shop and bring that. So I have some nice evenly cut pieces that I'm going to use. Otherwise, I have a jigsaw, some hand tools, and some random stuff. So I'm going to do this pretty low tech. I am not a carpenter, so please don't judge me. I have a pizza box to protect my floor. Alright, here goes nothing. Maybe you'll watch me cut my fingers off. That's pretty terrible. There it is. So I'm not going to win any awards on quality, but it's going to function just fine. Cabinet has been painted. I put 3 coats on it just to make sure it was nice and thick. So I added these rubber feet to the bottom of the cabinet. I took some silicone, put a dab in each spot, laid the rubber foot down, and then drilled a pilot hole, and then put in a screw. So I got the cabinet in without unplugging anything. So now I'm gonna see how I can mount all of this shit without disrupting the tank too much. So this part will be fun. So here's a quick and easy way to mount something like this where you have to put 2 screws in, take your level, put some masking tape on it, kind of line it up where the screws would sit. Make a mark where the screws would go, put it in, make it level, and then mark where the screws would go. Drill your pilot holes, drill the screws in place, and when you go to put it on, it should be level. This trick can work for hanging anything that requires 2 hanging points, even stuff not reef related. So as I have the dose mounted and the calcium and alkalinity buffer in place, I'm excited. I have something in this box that I've been looking for a while. It is the original tubing that came with the dose. Thick walled, it's pliable so it doesn't get kinked and hold shape. That's what the dose originally came with. When I went to replace it, I ordered this Neptune Systems tubing thinking it was the same thing, but as you can see, it's a lot more rigid, it's thin walled, and I hate it. It holds a shape. It's not very flexible. I'm excited that I found this. The only problem was I had to buy 100 feet of it, so I think I have a lifetime supply of it. It's Curitech Clearon 73 clear PVC tubing. I have all my controller equipment mounted. As you can see, all the plugs are still kind of a mess. That is by design. I want to be able to keep all of my equipment not zip tied together like I've done in the past, because then I cut stuff off because I don't feel like dealing with all the cables. So if I need to pull a pump to clean it, I can just unplug it, kind of snake the cord out from the nest, and then all of it will come out very easily. I don't really care about how good it looks or how clean it looks. There's no fire hazard here. I mean, these cords are all protected from under the tank, and everything's kind of organized well. So I'm not too worried about that. It's actually gonna make my life easier and allows me to be a little bit lazier. Head on from the tank, it doesn't look too bad. There's just those power cords that go down and then back up from behind the Stratton. But then if you look up, you'll see the power bricks zip tied to the light mount, which is kind of getting annoying. So I'm going to mount those into like a little shelf in a box up here. So you'll really only see it if you're trying to look under the HVAC duct. So yeah, you can kind of see from like the living room, it doesn't look great. So I had an idea. As I was tearing down my old computer, I had this thing to put the power strip in with all the cords. So what I'm gonna do is I have some shelf brackets. I'm actually gonna mount it upside down so it'll vent from the top and the back. And then when you look at it from the ground up, you'll just see this as the base. So it'll look nice and clean. Now I just need to figure out where to put these cords. Here is after I put all the Stratton cords up in cable management strips. You can see first one comes in here, second one here, and then the third just goes straight up. These are the same ones I used for my old tank. And then I have these from another project that go all the way up, and then the cords go into the box. So head on at the tank, you see very little cords, especially going up. Right, especially right here. You don't see all those cords going up, just the power plugs. And it looks pretty slick to me. And then I have some paint. So if this bothers me, that white strip, I have some paint that would match the concrete post. I can paint those and kind of conceal them a little more. Now that I have all the hardware it needs to go, I can cover all the equipment that runs this tank. First off, I'm really enjoying the physical aquarium itself. Innovative Marine makes a really nice looking tank. It's very solid, and I think this tank will hold up for a long time. The stand is great too, and being all aluminum, it should outlast the tank, unless some of the connectors, which may not be aluminum, might corrode. But overall, I think the stand is awesome as well. As for lights, I'm happy with my ATI Strattons. They provide a ton of light, and the coverage is probably only bested by T5s that span the entire length and width of the tank, because they do still have a little bit of shimmer compared to T5. I would say if you like to run super blue spectrum, they may seem underwhelming, but I like a bit more of a white spectrum by today's standard. I kind of run them like the radium bulb with blue LED strips for a good chunk of the day, and then I'll kind of transition into a bluer spectrum. I've seen people online say that they don't put out a lot of PAR, but if you run these with the whites, they can really crank out the PAR. In fact, I've had to dial mine back a bit since upgrading because I've noticed some issues with corals that could be related to light. I have a lot of flow in my tank due to having 4 large wave makers. So I have 2 MP40s on the back left and back middle. I have a Tunzi 6105 on the back, which is one of their larger directional power heads. And then I have a Tunzi Stream 3 on the back bottom right that blows 100% alternating current down the back of the tank. So the flow in my tank is really good for acros, but it makes a tough time finding places for the LPS. I kind of got into LPS recently, so I'm trying to shove those where I can, but ultimately I think at some point I'm gonna have to take some out as they get bigger. So flow always needs to be changed and altered as acros grow, so the arrangement or the equipment in this tank might change. So I usually don't get too excited about sumps, but I am enjoying this Turbos Aquatic sump that's kind of meant for a algae turf scrubber, but instead of putting an algae turf scrubber, I just run it as a frag tank. I run a Deltec 1000i skimmer with an inline CO2 scrubber, just to kind of keep my pH higher than it would be without it. I do love this skimmer in that it's super quiet, easy to clean, and Deltec's a good brand, so it should last a long time. I run a standard Apex EL with a Trident and a dose system for dosing my 2-part. While I don't let the Apex change my dosing amount based on the results of the tests, it's nice having the equipment all be Neptune, so it's easy to adjust everything on the fly. I use level monitoring meters and water on the ground meters for extra peace of mind as well. I have a level sensor in my auto top-off reservoir to alert me when I need to add more top-off water. And then I have a second one in my return chamber so it can tell me if my auto top-off's not running, if it's running low, or if the water's high, it might say that my return is not keeping up or is dying. I dose ESV 2-part for alk and calcium, and I use a BRS doser for dosing sodium nitrate. I would say I'm adequately satisfied with my current efflux return pump. It's a dummy DC pump, basically with a control knob from 0 to 100%, so you can't really control it through an app or any connected device. Not sure if I ever covered my plumbing, but the Innovative Marine has the external overflow. There is the continuous siphon drain here, and then 2 emergency drains. So the middle emergency drain always has a little bit of water trickling through it, and then you can see the secondary emergency drain that's kind of peaking above the water that ideally should never have water run into it. Very simple, it runs down. I have a gate valve with a union so I can remove this and everything else to clean it. I have my gate valve to kind of dial in my continuous overflow, and then that comes right down into my sump. You can see the drains come down. This is the primary, this is the emergency drain, and this is the secondary emergency drain. Those go into these bulkheads, which are not plumbed in, they're just kind of setting in there so they can be pulled out. And then there's the secondary emergency drain into my frag tank. It's above the water, so if it starts coming out, I'll be able to see it. And then as far as the return, I have one 3/4 inch tube that goes up, it tees off, and then those supply my 2 returns. Return here, and then the other return is up there. So I run UV on this tank. It's a 57 watt Aqua UV unit. I think it's the classic model. I run it mainly because I got tired of cleaning the glass every day, so it allows me to only clean the glass like once a week or so. Whatever other benefits it has, it might keep some pathogenic bacteria at bay. UV is not necessary, but I do love that it allows me to go a lot longer before needing to clean the glass. I have a total of 5 outlets for the tank, split between 2 separate circuits. 3 outlets are on a dedicated circuit for the tank, and then the other 2 outlets share outlets with the rest of the room. All outlets are GFCI protected, and the dedicated circuit is also AFCI protected. All outlets are marine rated, and the 3 outlets below the tank are protected with an outdoor outlet box, which should protect them from getting wet. Everything plugged in under the tank is facing away from the sump and is fully under the tank, so any splashing or minor leaks should not come in contact with any of the live electrical plugs. If there's a major leak, it's possible that they could get wet, but I would have bigger things to worry about. I don't run carbon, GFO, or mechanical filtration in the tank. Carbon and GFO can strip good stuff out of the tank too, so I'd rather rely on my water changes, the protein skimmer, and my UV filter to keep the water clean. I will run some mechanical filtration to polish the tank from time to time if it looks cloudy, but I think the particles act like little bacteria delivery vessels to the little coral mouths. I have filter cups instead of filter socks that are usually empty, but I can throw in some filter floss in there if needed. I also have a Marine Land polishing filter that I use when I blow off the rocks with the power head to get all the gunk out of the rocks. If you don't clean out your rocks often, then maybe you should. Update on the corals and fish. Most of my acropora are doing really well and growing at a nice rate. However, I have lost a few acro colonies and several frags since the upgrade. It's always the ones you like the most, like the yellows and the blue acros. I ended up tossing my Oregon tort colony since it looked like it was just going to keep RTNing from random spots, but I did save a few healthy chunky pieces that look to be doing okay. All of the new acros I've put in the tank since the upgrade are doing great, so I'm assuming any stressed corals are stressed from the move and not the current tank conditions. The acro issues are definitely a minority, as most of the ones I have in the tank are still doing really well. My green and blue slimers are growing faster than they've ever grown, along with my tabling acros towards the top. The zoanthids I have in the tank are also growing much faster than they've ever grown for me, which I'm not sure if I like because they can end up being a pest. The torches, the hammers, and the frog spawns have definitely settled in and are starting to grow pretty well. Eventually, as everything grows bigger, I'll have to consider removing or moving some of the colonies, as I do like the look of larger colonies over tons of smaller colonies all packed together. It's not going to be easy to pick and choose what I keep in the display tank, but I don't think I'll entirely get rid of anything. Maybe I'll let some colonies that I like more than others get huge while keeping the others pruned. I have a few acros on my wish list that I may get if the price is right, but I think ultimately I'm not going to add anything else to this tank. I have another little project coming up for some of the Ricordia Florida that's in the tank, as well as the leather corals that are on the rack. Those are definitely not going to stay in this tank long term. Fish in the tank are all vibrant, colorful, and appear to be at a healthy weight. I've had no signs of flashing or parasite spots like ick or flukes. All the fish were quarantined before going into the tank and seem to be parasite free. Since all the fish are doing so well and seem to get along, I'm hesitant to add anything else to the tank to potentially introduce parasites or upset the harmony in the tank. Overall, I don't have any major pests in my tank. I either have the best luck in the world or I'm really good at avoiding Iptasia, as I've never had any Iptasia in my tanks over the 15 or 16 years I've been doing this. It may be from being very choosy of where I get my corals, and I do a pretty good job of inspecting the plugs or any rockwork that goes into the tank. I don't have any visible algae in my display tank thanks to the yellow tang and other cleanup crew. The pests I do have are not too bad, and they come and go every couple of months, such as vermitids and those colonial hydroids that kind of stay in the dark. I have the dark, smaller purple-shelled vermitids that don't seem to bother anything too much. The Acropora and Monopora just seem to grow over them. Because there is such a good balance in the tank, I don't think I'm going to add too much more into the tank because I don't want to introduce any new pests. So in this video, I'm going to highlight the WWC AOI zoanthid. I got a frag from WWC about 3 years ago when I was in their monthly subscription program, and initially it struggled and almost looked as if it was going to die out, but I ended up saving 2 or 3 polyps off of the main plug, and then fortunately all 3 of those ended up surviving, and then it just started growing like a weed throughout my tank. This colony here was an extra frag that I took off the main colony and just posted on my rockwork just to see if it would do anything. And then it ended up exploding into what you see here. So much so that I ended up chopping up and getting rid of my main colony that I had on the ground. Initially it was a Stax Rocks that had several types of zoos on it, and then the AOI just engulfed all of them and it ended up just being one big AOI rock. So I ended up getting rid of that since this colony is pretty large. I would say once it gets settled, it's a very fast growing coral. I'm always ripping out polyps around the Acropora on this rock, and even though I'm smashing the polyps and ripping the tissue right off the rock, I end up gluing that down to a frag plug, and almost all of them recover and end up being nice frags for me to trade with people. Coloration wise, the blue is about as blue as an Oregon tort, and then contrasting with the greenish yellow mouth, I don't think there's many other zoanthids that can compete with its beauty. If you're still watching at this point and you like my content, please consider subscribing, as I'm going to continue making videos. So this concludes the upgrade of my SPS Reef tank. Thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in to the next one.